Welcome to episode 23 of the Fat Doctor podcast, season 4. I'm about to do something a little bit controversial, and I'm alright with that. I hope you will be too. Oh, look, I'm shuffling through my notes trying to find a piece of paper. Apologies, that was very disorganised of me. So, I haven't decided what I'm going to name this episode, but here's what I do want to talk about. There's a guy called Michael Mosley. He passed away not too long ago. And I want to talk about that. He is responsible for a lot of anti-fat diet culture within the UK. And if you don't live in the UK, and possibly Australia actually, I think he did a lot of things in Australia as well. If you don't live in either of those two countries, you may never have heard of him. Suffice it to say, he is responsible for a lot of very bad things. And I am not rejoicing in his death in any way, because I think that's weird to rejoice in anybody's death. And I think we can, as a society, learn a lot from his life and his unfortunate and untimely passing. So I'm going to talk about it. And I get that this may cause a little bit of friction. It may be a bit uncomfortable. I just want to say again, I am not happy that he is dead. I don't know that I've ever been happy that a person has died. Although death is a part of life. And everybody dies. So his death is no more or less important than anyone else's death. That being said, let's talk about Michael Mosley, the man. He was private school educated. He went to Oxford University to study philosophy, politics and economics. Then he decided he wanted to study medicine. Now, here's the thing you need to understand. In those days, you could go to university for free in the UK, which is why he managed to do a 3 or 4 year degree at Oxford and then do a 5-year degree in medicine afterwards. The thing is that he decided, whilst he was still in medical school, that he didn't want to be a doctor. So even though he completed medical school, he actually never practiced. Instead, he joined the BBC and he worked as a TV presenter, and I think he did a lot of backstage stuff as well. I think he was a producer, and he did lots and lots of things. And I know him primarily because he popularised intermittent fasting, in particular the 5-2 diet. It became very famous in the UK and I think worldwide because of Michael Mosley. He did a documentary for BBC Horizon called Eat, Fast and Live Longer. And he told the world that if you did intermittent fasting, in particular the 5-2 diet, that you would live longer. And pretty much everyone got on board with that, at least for a while. I remember I got on board with that. And a lot of non-medical professionals and medical professionals got on board with that. It was a big thing. Like, if you did the 5-2 diet, your cholesterol levels would come down, your blood sugar levels would come down, your blood pressure would come down, you would live longer. Like, we were quite obsessed for a while with intermittent fasting. I think to some degree we are still obsessed. And in 2013, soon after his documentary, he sold a book called The Fast Diet, and it was hugely successful and kind of cemented himself as an expert in nutrition and weight science from that moment forwards. Now, Michael Mosley has a degree in philosophy, politics and economics from Oxford University. He did a medical degree where he would have had very little, if any, training in nutrition. He was actually going to be a psychiatrist. That was his plan. So absolutely no kind of education when it comes to nutrition. And he worked in television. That was his trade. That was his his career, his whole life. So he was by no means an expert, but he did get to use the title doctor because he went to medical school and therefore was entitled to use it. And people were under the very misguided impression that he was actually a medical doctor, even though he wasn't. So I guess that gave him some credibility. So when the Fast Diet came out, the book The Fast Diet came out, people were really on board, really loved it. He took it a little bit further. A few years later, he came out with the Fast 800 diet. This is when he combined intermittent fasting with starvation, aka very low calorie diets, 800 calorie diets. His book, The Fast 800 Diet, how to combine rapid weight loss and intermittent fasting for long-term health. Eat, fast and live longer. Combine rapid weight loss and intermittent fasting for long-term health. Yes, folks, starve your cells. That's the key to longevity. Michael Mosley told us, and we believed him. He did a program called Lose a Stone in 21 Days. For those who don't know, a stone's about 14 pounds. Lose 14 pounds in 21 days. How? Starve yourself. 800 calories a day. He did a program called Who Made Britain Fat? By this point in time, I was no longer paying any attention to Michael Mosley because I had escaped diet culture, so I didn't watch that one, thank God. Who made Britain fat? Well, that's a very interesting question. I would argue that Michael had a role to play in that. As we all know, when you diet, what happens is, to begin with, you lose weight. And that's usually in the form of lean mass, so water, muscle, etc. Why? Because it takes about 5 times the calorie deficit to lose fat mass than it does lean mass. So your body will lose lean mass before it starts losing fat mass. That's just physiology. And then you hit a plateau, and that plateau is when you run out of lean mass to lose, and you start working on losing the fat mass. That's much harder, and therefore you plateau significantly. And then eventually you hit what we call the nadir, the peak, the max level of weight loss for that particular weight cycle. That's it. You're not losing any more. And that is caused by a number of factors. Your metabolic rates, it's to do with hormones, it's to do with your gut, it's to do with all sorts of things. Genetics, being turned on, being turned off, all sorts. Weird and wonderful things. But anyway, you hit your peak, and what happens after, folks? Say it together. You start restoring weight. We used to call it regaining weight. I don't do it anymore. Restoring weight. Restoring because you weren't supposed to lose it in the first place. And you start restoring weight, and you keep restoring weight until you hit baseline, and oftentimes, more often than not, beyond baseline. So you end up restoring more weight than you lost in the first place. So who made Britain fat? Well, that's a really stupid question to ask, but one of the many reasons why Britain is getting quote unquote fatter is because people keep going on diets. And the biggest risk factor, so it makes it sound like it's a risk, but the biggest factor, well, take the risk out, the biggest factor for weight gain is in fact intentional weight loss. So anyway, that I'm assuming was not part of his program. Michael Mosley, he was convinced that his way of living would make you live longer, live a long, healthy life. And at 67 years old, on the 5th of June 2024, he went missing on a Greek island, and he apparently died from natural causes at 67. He went for a walk, and that was it. His body was found a few days later. Natural causes, they say, no foul play. He was found literally meters away from a restaurant. It was very hot on the day that he went walking. Nobody knows what happened. We haven't got the results of his autopsy, and we may never find out exactly the cause of his death. But he died at 67. I wouldn't call that a long life. I wouldn't call it a short life, but I wouldn't call it a long one. It's definitely a lot less than the average life expectancy for a cisgender, heterosexual, white, middle man who was, let's face it, rich his whole entire life, went to private school, went to Oxford, etc., etc. Those folks tend to live quite long. He didn't. He died at 67, which is really sad. But also begs the question, Michael, if you were an expert in living long, how comes you didn't live long? And I know that is not... That doesn't, I mean, one has nothing to do with the other. I mean, I remember being interviewed for a newspaper, and there was a journalist who listed 3 people who were kind of Hays aligned, or whatever they called it, Hays aligned, but fat liberationists, people who were anti-diet. 3 people who had died young, and they said, "Isn't that a sign that health at every size is on its way out because 3 people died?" And I remember saying, what has one got to do with the other? I don't understand. Like, why would you possibly think that? But if we're going to go by that logic, then Michael Mosley just proved that the 5-2 diet is a load of shit, right? Because he didn't live a long time. That's me being controversial. I don't agree with that. I didn't agree with the journalist either. One has nothing to do with the other. But I just wanted to point out that in spite of all of the privileges that he had, and in spite of this very healthy lifestyle that he claimed to lead, he was a thin man his whole life. Michael Mosley died at 67. So, weight science is bad science. It's just bad science. And when I say bad science, I mean like the rules of quote unquote science. And when I say science, I mean research, statistics, data collection, data interpretation, all of these things. When it comes to weight science, they're shit. They're just shit. They don't collect data correctly. They absolutely do not interpret data correctly. They make huge assumptions that nobody questions because, we're all massively biased. And this bad science has existed for over a century, much more than a century. I've talked about it in previous episodes. I've talked about eugenics. I've talked about Lewis Dumblin and the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company and their height weight tables. I've talked about the BMI, which has extremely horrendous sort of foundations. But even when Ansel Keys came along and sort of introduced the BMI as a means of assessing fat people, even he said don't use it to assess individuals. And then along comes the dietary guidelines for Americans, just about over a decade later, maybe a little bit more than a decade later, and they're like, oh yeah, no, we're going to use BMI now to assess individuals, even though that was never the intent. And then the WHO comes along again with like no real science, like arbitrary cutoffs. They say arbitrary cutoffs. My life is determined by arbitrary cutoffs. My ability to get top surgery determined by arbitrary cutoffs. Arbitrary, just a number. Sort of worked using an assessment, the body mass index, which is based on no real good quality data, and was never meant as an individual assessment. And even the cutoffs are complete nonsense. I mean, like it's shit science. But when you have over a century of crap science, you're kind of building on that, right? It starts off and then you build on it and you build some more and you build some more and you build some more. Like the foundations are crap, but there's a huge skyscraper sitting on those crappy foundations, folks. And it's really difficult to be like, no, this is not true, because people are like, I think you'll find it is. And, there's no comeback because people aren't really willing to listen to reason. So it's bad science. And also money. Michael Mosley made a lot of money. This was not a cheap holiday on a cheap Greek island, folks. Pretty exclusive stuff. And that's because he had a lot of money, because he sold weight loss. And he did it in quite a big, spectacular way. He was considered one of the foremost experts every time he was a guest on a panel, every time he wrote another book or an article or this or that. He was getting paid. He was getting paid. He was lining his pockets. A man who has absolutely no qualifications whatsoever, no history of research or learning or understanding. A man who basically worked in television became the figurehead for the 5-2 diets, for intermittent fasting, and from then onwards was considered an expert in quote-unquote weight science. So yeah, money. And people are making money out of weight loss. We all know this. I don't need to tell you who's making money out of weight loss. But not just Michael Mosley. It's the entire weight loss industry. And that includes pharmaceutical companies. That includes insurance companies. That includes the food industry. That includes weight management programs. And so on and so forth. So there's a lot of money in weight science. And then there's the media. Can we just stop for a minute and appreciate just like how influential the media is? And then we know this. We're watching it in real time. Those of us who have been paying attention to what has been happening to Palestine since October 7th. And in fact, it's only since that some of us have opened our eyes, right? Because prior to that, even though it had been going on for 75 years, most of us didn't know what was going on. But even since then, the media, the mainstream media's portrayal of what's going on has been grossly misleading, and that's me being polite. Then they're not to be trusted. We can't trust the media when the money and the power and the influence is on one side, because the media will always be on that side. Same with politicians, same with anyone, right? So we have bad science, we have money, we have media. And social media, obviously, because that's, for me, part of media. And so here I am thinking about Michael Mosley, Dr. Michael Mosley, who passed away tragically at a young age, even though he told us, he literally said, you can live long if you follow my diet. And it really got me thinking. It got me thinking about living long. Because that's what society is trying to tell us that we need to do, right? It's about long life. It's about longevity. People are interested in living as long as they possibly can. And that's not a new thing. I think this has probably been our obsession since the dawn of time. Interestingly, though, it's become about long life, but not necessarily a good life. We're not so much encouraged to live well as we are encouraged to live long. And I have a problem with that. I have a real problem with that for two reasons. Number one, if you're not living well, chances are you won't live long. If you're not happy, if you're not enjoying things, if you're not experiencing pleasure, if you don't get to rest and explore and breathe, and I mean that quite literally, like breathe, clean air, but also in that kind of more emotional sense of just taking deep breaths and being able to just calm all of that adrenaline that's rushing around our bodies on a daily basis. If you can't do that, chances are you're not going to live very long, or you're not going to live as long as you could, right? Because these are hugely important factors in good health and longevity. So living well is part of living long, but also if you have to choose between living well and living long, like ultimately that should be your decision, right? Like it should be a personal decision. I remember my mum, like she always believed and raised us to believe that it's about living well, and that the day like her time came, she was ready to go. She was absolutely ready to go. And it was interesting because she got sick. She outlived Michael Mosley, but she got sick young, 68 when she was diagnosed, 69 when she passed away, from pancreatic cancer. And I remember her being like, yeah, okay. I mean, I always said I was going to live well. I have lived well. She took early retirement. She, did all the things she wanted to do as soon as she could. She hadn't had a great life. She'd definitely not had a great beginning or middle, and probably not end either. But she really tried to live as well as she could and to enjoy life. And so when she was dying, she was a bit like, I'm not interested in extending my life. Even at the end, she was like, I want it to be as good as possible. And if it can't be good, then I want out. And I think, I'd like to think, It's very difficult. You don't know until you're there. But I'd like to think that living well, to me, is more important than living long. Yeah, I'd love to see my grandchildren grow up. And that's the thing we get told, isn't it? I mean, how many of my clients have said to me that their doctors have threatened them, have said, if you want to, be there to see your children grow up, and to see your grandchildren, you need to lose weight, you need to do this, you need to do that, because, we want to live long. And yeah, of course, we all do. It's human nature. But at the same time, we want to live well. And I think one of the things about society that we have to remember is that when it comes to what other people consider, well, not what other people, what the people in power consider living well is actually to be productive. It's not to be happy, it's to be productive. We need to be productive members of society. And what that means is we need to earn money for the man, as my kids would say. Pull your weight, earn money, pay tax, make sure that the rich get richer, even though the poor are getting poorer. Be productive, not happy, productive. Live long and be as productive as you possibly can. So says colonialism, white supremacy, capitalism, etc., etc. Again, why? When we stop for a moment, when we think about this TV program, I forgot what it was called, and I have to look back in my notes. What was it called? Eat, fast and live longer. I mean, it's a bit of a misnomer because you weren't eating. That was the whole point. You were fasting. But live longer. There was nothing about being happy, and it's pretty miserable to starve yourself and to fast and to have days when you're not eating. Because you see, your body needs energy, and energy comes from glucose, and glucose comes from carbohydrates, and carbohydrates need to be consumed every day. You see, you can store energy in your body, absolutely, but it's quite difficult for the body in the long term to turn this stored form of energy into energy that the cells can use. It's quite challenging. It requires a lot of effort. It's not easy. It's just why when you're starving you feel tired. It's why you don't have much energy. It's why you find it harder to concentrate, and you think I'm making that up. That's not true. There are studies that show that low carb diets reduce your memory and your ability to concentrate on things. And fasting makes you feel like crap. Again, we have studies to show that. So live long, be productive, but don't be happy. I mean, that's not our concern. Society doesn't care whether you're happy or not. The only person who cares whether you're happy is you. And we're taught that we have to work hard to earn respect. Work hard to prove our worth, our value. Work hard in order to be accepted by society, in order not to be rejected by society. Work hard in order to be loved, in order to be worth something. We're told that is what we need to do. Live long, be productive, and work hard to earn respect, to earn our value, to earn our place. I remember I used to really struggle with the idea that as a fat person, people assume that I'm lazy. I really hated the idea that people thought I was lazy. And then one day, I asked myself, what's so bad about being lazy? Why is it so bad? Why am I terrified that people think I'm lazy? I get why it's bad to be aggressive. Well, no, not aggressive, but, violent. I get why it's bad to be violent. You hurt other people. I get why it's bad to steal or to, in some cases, or to assault people. I get why that's bad. I do. Why is it bad to be lazy? Who am I hurting? If I am a lazy person, why is that bad? Why is lazy such a dirty word? Why? Because then you're not productive, because then you're not working hard to earn respect, to earn, your place in society. You're not producing the goods, folks. And that's what we're being told. That's what Michael Mosley wanted us to believe. Not just him, but everybody. Not just him. I'm not just singling him out. Every single person on the television, within the medical profession, and most in politics, in society, everyone wants us to believe that that's the right thing to do. And if you are not going to live long or be productive or work hard to earn your respect, then not only will you lose out, but more importantly, you will be punished. You will be punished. And that's the thing that really gets me. Like, if I choose to opt out of longevity, if my doctor says to me, if you don't do this, you won't live as long, and I go, cool, all right, we'll leave it at that shit then, shall we? Like, I don't want to live long. I get punished. I get told, well, there's nothing more I can do for you. Well, hang on, wait. I have symptoms. I mean, I'm not trying to live longer, but I still don't want to I want to be happy. I want to live good quality. I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to be struggling. No. Either you choose long life, either you work hard to earn respect and to be productive, or I'm not going to treat you. No, you'll just have to suffer, won't you? Lose weight, or you won't get your hip replacement. Lose weight, or you won't get your top surgery. Lose weight, or you won't be able to have kids. Lose weight, or you'll pay higher insurance premiums. Lose weight, or you won't be able to buy that house. Lose weight, or I mean, I could keep going on and on and on and on. But you know where I'm going here. These are the thoughts I've been having since I found out that Michael Mosley, someone who has played quite an important role in my life. My father was obsessed with the 5-2 diet, and I was to a degree. And I wanted to live long for a really long time. And I tried everything, including intermittent fasting. And just when he died, I remember thinking, really? Really? How is that? I mean, this man was supposed to live into his 90s. He was supposed to outlive other people. Turns out we don't get to decide. Turns out we have zero control over how long we're going to live. Turns out we really don't get to control our health in any way. Can you imagine? Turns out everything we've been told is actually just a fantasy to keep us in line, to get us to be productive, to work hard, so that the rich can keep getting richer. Because with all the will in the world, folks, no matter what you eat, no matter how much exercise you do, no matter how much rest you get, and no matter how much yoga you do, folks, you have zero control over whether you develop a condition, a medical condition, a disability, or in fact you have zero control over when you're going to die. What you do have some control over, however, is how you are going to live each day. That you have some control, and I'm saying some because I appreciate that actually it's not that simple, and most of us don't have full control. We don't have, there are many situations and circumstances that force us to do things we don't want to be doing. None of us want to be working long hours. None of us want only a 2-day weekend. None of us really, we would much rather be happy and go on holiday every month and live in a mansion, but we need money in order to do that. And so we can't control everything. But we can control whether or not we opt in or opt out of this whole kind of eat that, eat this, exercise, take this drug, do this surgery, blah, blah, blah. We don't have to opt into that. We can just say no. No thanks. I don't want to. And next time you, especially if you live in the UK, because this might not translate across the pond, but next time you're at your doctor's office and your doctor says to you, unless you lose weight, unless you do this, unless you try this diet, low carb, very low calorie diet, you're not going to live very long. You can turn around and say, tell that to Michael Mosley. Try that one. Tell that to Michael Mosley. 67. Controversial. I did say it would be a bit controversial. Next week, I'm hoping that my wonderful guest, Nicola Salmon, is going to be with us, and we're going to be talking. I have no idea what we're going to be talking about, but it'll be great because She's a really good buddy of mine. So don't miss out on that. Last week I said there would be... I don't know if I called it a course. Did I call it a course? A free course that I was going to be giving you, and hopefully it'll be ready. Yeah, I haven't done that yet. I mean, I've started it, but I haven't finished it. So for those of you wondering, where is it? I'm behind. I'm very behind. I would apologise, but I'm not going to. It's just life, isn't it? Life gets in the way. But we're getting there. I recorded it, and it's quite good. It's more about finding the right platform for it and sorting all the admin out, which is never my strong point. In the meantime, next Tuesday, the 2nd of July, I am doing a masterclass on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, otherwise known as fatty liver, because we are in the habit of fat-shaming livers now. Sometimes you go to the doctor, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of what it might be. Like you're feeling tired all the time, and then they do some liver function tests, and they're like, got to get you a scan. And then they do a scan, they're like, oh, your liver is really fat. It's kind of like BMI. Okay, and? Oh, well, it's fat. And? Oh, you're probably going to die. You're not going to live very long, are you? You're not going to be very productive, and you're a bad person. But then what? Oh, well, lose weight. Kind of like with BMI. In fact, it's exactly like BMI. So for those of you interested in finding out more about fatty liver in a way that is weight neutral and looks at the evidence without assuming that dieting and exercising is somehow going to miraculously cure it, then you don't want to miss out on my masterclass. And if you're like, that sounds good, but I don't have fatty liver disease, you might have another condition that I've already covered in my masterclasses. Did you know that? I've got them all on my website, and you can watch any of them. And there's ones on perimenopause, there's chronic pain, there's weight loss injection, there's weight loss surgery. What else have I done? Blood sugars, Ozempic. There's more. I'm not organised, but yeah. Take a look at my website to find out more. Click on masterclasses, and then you can see all the old ones. Not the old ones, but the ones that I've done before, and you can watch those. All right. Well, this has been fun. I'm slightly concerned about putting this out in case people get upset with me, but it's all right. It's all right. It's fine. You can be upset with me if you like. You can disagree with me if you like. In fact, feel free to. You can contact me anytime through my website. Thanks for listening, folks, and I'll see you next week.